Hello tankers and tankettes, and welcome to Supporter Spotlight number 16. We've got an all tanks edition for you this time round, and I think what I'm going to do after this is an all warships edition for the next one, so that'll be number 17 obviously, because I've been getting a fair few warships replays from my Patreon supporters recently as well, so I think it'll be nice to get several out there at once. However, this time round we're starting off with this game, and it's not really connected to the other two. The other two replays I have for you are kind of connected, but not really, but kind of. You'll see what I mean. But this one is a medium tank. It's the T54E1, and it really has nothing to do with either of the other two replays, except obviously they're all from my Patreon supporters. The T54E1, and this is really good matchmaking for this tank by the way, is a bit on the tricky side to play. I mean, the line itself is a bit funny because you're going from, what is it, a medium tank at tier 5, and then you get some light tanks, and then you get a medium tank, and then a heavy tank. So if you're trying to use the same crew all the way up the line, good luck with that. But the tank itself, it's 390 average damage per shell. You get 4 of those in a clip, and you can whip them out fairly quickly. So if you can find a target you can do damage to, because it does suffer a little bit in terms of penetration, you can really do quite a lot quite quickly. The burst potential of this thing is pretty tasty. So he's got a bunch of allies that have come with him, but they're getting pretty wrecked, and actually, given that this is Himmelsdorf, artillery, enemy artillery, is able to do a surprising amount, but that's because they've been able to position themselves in such a way as to get shots on the hill. So they must be kind of B1, B2. This team really doesn't have any control of the 1-2-3 line at all. There's a single Jagdpanther over there, so their artillery can kind of sit in a position with impunity where they can shoot up here, and that's going to be a problem. So here we go, second clip. Unfortunately the first one takes the tracks of the 54E1, although having tracked the guy, and there's artillery, means that he was able to be finished off, but I'm sure IB, the one true nub here, would have preferred that the shell did a bit of damage. But anyway, that's one less enemy tank. However, they're also losing tanks to the Object 704 that we can see was down in kind of D2, so somehow they're getting shots all the way up here as well. So not having control of the 1-2-3 line is costing them the hill, basically. There goes the T29, so it's now just basically IB, the one true nub, and this Chiri, and the Chiri's not looking too healthy. So this is a problem. This is a real problem. And with an autoloader, of course, well, if your clip's full, you're dangerous, but if your clip's empty, not so much. So he has to have a plan to run away. So there's artillery again. The VKD, well, not that much of a threat, but the T10 kind of is. So if you can take out the T10, and he's trying to initially aim for the commander's hatch, bounces a shell and decides to just go forward and finish this guy. So there you go, he's dead. The Chiri actually gets the kill, and he's possibly feeling the pressure a bit here, but oh, that's a low roll, that's unfortunate. So the VKD has lived due to RNG. So now he's got to reload, and he's basically totally vulnerable. He's reliant on the Chiri during this period. And there's the 1390. This is potentially bad. The 1390 perhaps figuring that he's reloading, goes in, kills the Chiri, and at this point the VKD is going to come up behind him surely, but no, he's been rather hesitant. So IB gets his front arm around and actually does manage to bounce some shells here, and that's one of the, like, you get to tier 9. The T69, I don't know that it is particularly well armoured, but this, I mean, oh, there we go, he's struggling a bit with his aiming there. This thing, the armour can be surprisingly troll, and the T57 Heavy is kind of the same. So, oh, there we go, 704 has just been sat down on that line and getting shots up all game long. Goodness knows how much damage that guy's got, but we've come to this now, and he's done nearly 4,000 damage, he's got 4 kills, and sadly it's not been enough. The rest of his team's just, I don't know, most of the top tiers, I think most of the tier 9s were on the hill, and they just got wrecked, apart from IB, the one true nub. And it's because they didn't have any control of the other side of the map, pretty much. They even lost control of the 7-8 line, where they had a couple of heavy tanks and tank destroyers. So, unfortunately, it's just been not quite enough what he was able to do up there. So the IS-3 comes in for him, damages his gun, and he actually goes, rather than try and go for the hull, for the soft turret top, and that does rather well. And that's the power of an autoloader right there, especially this one with the damage per shell, is that he can whip out the damage. And at the end of a battle, an autoloader is especially powerful because you've got more low health enemies running around. So he was actually able to dispose of both of those tanks rather quickly. Now this T-20 for some reason is firing HE shells, and I don't know why. Is it possible the T-20 ran out of AP ammo and premium ammo? Maybe he didn't even carry any premium ammo. I don't know. I don't know how much ammo that thing actually has. But the shots that he's firing over and over at IB the One True Nub's tank here are all HE. Anyway, that bounced. That was a 704 he just bounced, and I think one of his shots wasn't a damaging shot, it went in the tracks, and that cost him a kill there basically, because he's now reloading, he's now helpless. The T-20 again with the HE, but it tracks him, and that's going to allow the 704 to come round the corner, and this one is not going to bounce. No. So that was over 6,000 damage, and he actually took out a couple of tanks at the end there and made it that bit closer still, but it wasn't quite close enough, unfortunately. Now, this is not quite, I mean, there's one tank left, it's this FV3805, who decides to try his luck against the GW Tiger P, and we're going to get to see this little artillery duel. Who has the better RNG, and that is what it is basically going to come down to. I mean, you can, like this kind of artillery fight, basically what you do is you auto aim and whatever, but he came round. I mean, that GW Tiger had warning that he was going to come around that corner, and he was pre-aimed, so yeah, that FV was never going to walk out of that alive. So yeah, no artillery carry there, sadly. But this was still an ace tanker for IB the One True Nub on a loss. Now, he did get a high caliber and a top gun out of it, so he would have gotten courageous resistance, but still 1400 base XP, 6219 damage, and 6 kills. He really outshone the rest of his team, and actually that Chi-Ri that was up on the hill that lasted a reasonably long time was second place. So the team as a whole, yeah, and you can see their damage blocked by armor over 3,000, and of course at least 750 of that was from the Object 704 bouncing a shot at the end there. He had to be cursing his luck, because that cost him most of his hit points, and could have cost him his tank if IB's first shot hadn't gone in his tracks. Next up we have me. Well, this might require a little explanation. This is over on the NA server, and this is actually me platooned up with Redman36, who is one of my Patreons, obviously. He's the guy that I've been playing on NA for, and one of the tanks I bought when it was on discount over Christmas was this, the Churchill 3. Now, looking at the matchmaking, this in theory looked like it could be a pretty good game for me. This is very, very nice matchmaking for a tier 5 tank, and if you know what you're doing in a Churchill 3, well, this is pretty damn good indeed. However, you will note I am working with about 120 ping, so that's been a little bit of an interesting experience, shall we say. I mean, I've done videos, I did a live recorded one about my experiences at low tiers on NA, and it's a little better now I'm at tier 5, but sometimes the ping does count against you. Now, I've taken one hit already. I'm struggling to do damage here because trying to hit people when they're dodging in and out, and that's my one and only hit that does something, by the way, bounced on the side of a tier 4 light tank, because, okay, but I'm thinking, okay, we'll go around the side, we'll deal with these tanks here, and I've still got a reasonable amount of health left, but oh, well, okay then. So what happened there was I got penned by that enemy artillery shot. In fact, it might not even have been a penning shot. 455 damage isn't that much for a penning shot from... Or was it tier 4? It might have been the... No, yes, it was tier 4. It is tier 4 artillery. Yeah, it penned or possibly didn't, but it set me on fire for 2 ticks of damage, and I literally couldn't, like... It registered that I used my fire extinguisher, but because of the ping, I burned out even so. So not only did I burn out to death, but it also lumped me with the cost of the fire extinguisher anyway. Yeah, yeah, it's super good, super good. So I think for NA, I'm just going to have to play with automatic fire extinguishers on literally everything, because sometimes that's going to be life or death. So that was my game right there, 2-shotted by artillery. But that's not the point of this replay. The point is Redman here in his Su-85B. Now, the reason why he was in a tier 4 and I was in a tier 5, well, Churchill 3, of course, has limited matchmaking, and he didn't have anything that did have limited tier 5 matchmaking. So he thought, you know what, this is a really good machine. I think this is actually one of his favourite low tier, dare I say, seal clubbers, because the Su-85B has a very good gun for tier 4. It's one of the few tier 4s that really can cope, at least in terms of its gun, with seeing 2 tiers higher. Not many can, but this, it's got that combination of the gun and the mobility to actually not totally suck, so long as your team doesn't all die, which is kind of what happened here. Redman is now the last guy alive. Now he's killed 1 tank, but there's still 4 left. Now, if you're doing the maths, and you know your medals, you'll know that being alone against 5 tanks is a bit of a special number. It gives you a shot at a certain medal that you don't see very often. So in theory, he can get a Kolobanovs. Now there's still 2 artillery left. The 2 tier 3s aren't such a threat, but it's not like he has a lot of armour. So if one of these guys, and that shot, that RNG, just one-shotting that guy with an ammo rack, yeah, you can't plan for that kind of thing at all. But you know, you're not going to look that kind of gift in the mouth. Or gift horse, rather. That's how the saying goes, right? So, yeah, he's taken out that one guy that was spotting him. The Toldy, by the way, hasn't been spotted all battle. Neither have either artillery, but that's not so surprising. So, the Toldy we figured maybe was AFK. But surprisingly, the tier 4 French arty turns up here. And the Toldy turns up there, so not AFK at all. So this is a little bit risky. Redman stopping to aim at this guy, gets a hit in, which is very good. This Toldy maybe not working with a very good ping or a very good crew or whatever. So Redman fortunately still hasn't taken any damage, but both these artilleries could easily one-shot him. That's probably the biggest disadvantage still of the Su-85, is it is kind of limited in its carrying power. I mean, like I've said, the gun's good, the mobility's good, the view range is actually pretty good for tier 4, but it takes damage very easily. And even though, in theory, this is now pretty reasonable to artillery, they could easily cripple him, if not just outright obliterate him. So he's playing cautious, and that is entirely understandable. So we know where the 105 was. He perhaps suspects that the 105 was going to come up behind him. And I was kind of... I mean, we're on Skype at this point, and I was sort of, like, trying to give him good advice, but at the same time not trying to backseat drive him too much, because I was conscious of the fact that if I was sort of going, look over there, and do this, and do this, and do this, it might distract him at some crucial moment. So I was trying not to be too heavy-handed with the backseat driving, but I was doing my best to give him advice that I felt was appropriate. So he's going forward now to spot the enemy base, because if he can take out the M37, then that makes tackling the 105 a bit less risky. He's not going to get spotted by one for the other, and that was the risk with the tier 3s, that he would get spotted and artillery would take him out. But it seems like the enemy arty and the S-35 that he ammo racked, they weren't really working in concert. They weren't pre-aiming towards the friendly base. So there is more than enough time to cap for both sides at this point. So the risk is that maybe the French arty goes for the cap. But the thing with this map is that if you control that high middle ground, it's actually relatively easy to defend the cap points. And that's why when you see people rushing through the valley and they don't meet a lot of opposition and they stream onto the cap, they get picked apart from the middle very often, because that's where all the enemies have gone. And they can just sit up there in a great big shooting gallery and pour fire down into the cap circle. And on this side especially, there is really no cover. There's a little more cover on the southern cap in terms of the kind of rocks just kind of lining the front ridge, whatever you want to call that bit of land. But still, it rarely works out. So if the arty tries to cap, there's a very good chance he can get back there in time with the speed of this thing and spot them and shoot them, destroy them. Now, he was knocking a few things over here at the moment, but it actually doesn't matter, because there's the AMX. It's not like he was going to get spotted from artillery view. And he actually... I can't remember if he'd been spotted or not, because he does have 6th sense on this thing. But of course, obviously, this has got better view range than an artillery. So there we go. That shot takes him out in one go. And that was actually a nice high damage roll. I think it was AP. I don't think it was HE was firing there, if memory serves. So that is one problem gone. It just leaves the M37. We don't know where this guy is, but that makes things a lot less tense. And so, although initially it came down to looking a bit dicey, 1 versus 5, the nature of the 1 versus the nature of the 5 actually gave Redman a really good chance of pulling this off. And if he can find this M37, not only will he have a top gun, but he'll have a Kolobanovs as well. So he's going to have another little peek. He's going to use these bushes. He's going to let his binoculars come up. And there's the M37. And because he's in cover, he's definitely outspotting this guy. So he fires. That probably does get him spotted. But the M37, I think, was looking the wrong way. And there you go. The rate of fire on this thing, it meant he could just pound out that second shot. And bam, he's gone. So he's done it. Now, I don't have detailed results for Redman because I don't have his replay. Unfortunately, his replay file derped. But there you go. 6 kills, 1700 damage, 1158 base XP, and just ignore my result. I wasn't bottom of the team, at least, but yeah, you saw what happened to me. So there we go, he got 5 for effect, Demo Expert, High Caliber, Top Gun, and Kolobanovs medal, all in the Su-85B. And yeah, it's a bit of a seal clubber, but you kind of need something that's a bit of a seal clubber to have pulled that off at the end of the day. So all in all, that was one of those times when you needed to be a little bit overpowered in order to secure the win, as it turned out. Lastly, we come to this game from Manty 111, and this is not even the first 704 game we've had from Manty. I've actually been sitting on this one for a while, and I've been waiting for a good opportunity to use it, and this is the connection. This is the connection right here, because if you eat your vegetables and you do your dailies in your Su-85B, someday you'll grow up to be big and strong and you'll get an Object 704. This is what follows on from the ISU 152, and it's basically the exact same gun but with better stats and I think a better reload as well. And at tier 9, well, this is not an uncommon sort of a tank destroyer gun. It's just getting this sort of a gun at tier 8 is very, very uncommon. In fact, it's literally just the ISU that gets to have it. There's nothing like that on any of the other lines, I don't think. They're all kind of 120mm at the biggest at tier 8. So this is mines at tier 9. Yeah, and there's artillery. So yeah, what's a tank destroyer to do? Well, surprisingly, he hasn't really been spotted yet. He's having to be a bit careful here because there's really a very limited choice of places to go. Very limited. And if you haven't heard somebody like Circon saying this already, this map really does suck at higher tiers for the same reason that maps like Wide Park sucked at higher tiers, and the same reason why they removed Province at higher tiers. Like, Province used to be, way back in the day, a map that higher tiers could see. Can you imagine that? Higher tier tanks on Province. But yeah, those maps, some of them have been removed, some of them have been restricted to low tiers, except for mines, which is really just the nature of the map. It's too small for high tier gameplay, and it comes down to who wins the hill wins 90% of the time, if not more. And it's not a hard and fast rule. The enemy team have easily taken the hill, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee a win. It's still possible to take the hill and give a game away. And Manty's going to do his best to ensure that it isn't going to be a win for the enemy team. Now, he's done 3,000 damage already. Half of that alone was against the Lerva that just, like, having been smacked once by Manty's gun, then went and sat in exactly the same location and allowed it to happen to himself again. So that was not particularly great pattern recognition on that guy's part. However, Manty is being still very cautious, and I think a large part of that is due to the presence of enemy artillery, which could easily shave off a huge amount of his health. Like the French RT probably wouldn't one-shot him. The GW Panther, I'm not actually sure, but either way, it could be pretty damn bad. So it looks like there's a 704 about to come into his render range, and he actually turns round to, well, first off it looks like he's trying for the E75, and then he notices the 704 and the 1390 pinging for help. And that 704, this is why it's difficult to do anything other than what Manty's doing or what the enemy tank destroyers are doing. We can see the enemy Waffle Pans down in K4. there's not really a lot to do in a tank destroyer on this map. It's just too cramped. You can either go and sit in the kind of the lee of the hill and basically then not have anything to shoot at, or you can sit at the kind of camping positions at the back and just hope that enemies come into your field of view. There's not really any room to play with. There's no other strategies. You just have to do the same thing each time and kind of hope it works out. Now, the 1390 was going a bit YOLO there, just a bit. And Manti did take him out, but got spotted in the process. So that's the first damage he's taken from that E75, who is up in the middle and using those rocks for cover. Primarily against artillery, I would think, but also he's being very cautious about Manti as well, because he knows Manti's there, obviously. Now, I don't think Manti was actually spotted there. I think he was... I mean, he might have been still spotted, but I think that was actually a blind shot, the second one. It went in his tracks, though, and that's a little bit fortunate for Manti, because the armour on this thing is kind of troll, but you're not really ever going to want to rely on it. It does sort of have the magnetic gun mantlet of the ISU, but it takes up less of the frontage than the ISU's gun mantlet, just because of the shape of the front of this thing. But anyway, there's the E75. Finally, he gets a little bit of vengeance. Gets a nice hit. That's actually a high roll, just over 800. E75 fires back, but Manti's just trying to use this dip in the terrain here and use the rock as well to get some cover between them. So they're a little bit down on tanks at the moment, but not by a lot. This is quite a grindy, close game, and because they don't have the hill, I mean, if they'd had the hill, maybe his team could have more aggressively, you know, they could have made this a quicker game. I'll put it that way. But as it is, this is going to be more of a kind of a drawn-out game, and Manti could try and go forwards here, but it would just be plain suicidal for him to do so, because he could get shot from the hill, he could get shot from the E75. I mean, where's he going to go at this point? Now, the 1-2 line is clear. In theory, maybe he could have whizzed down there, but I'm pretty sure he would have been spotted from the hill doing it. So he's holding this defensive position. And it really is, I mean, yeah, we get kind of annoyed at people in camping tank destroyers, but on some maps, those tank destroyers really don't have a choice. They really don't. And it's not so much the fault of the tank destroyer players as it is of the map design. And mines, as I've said, should just not be in higher tiers. This should be tier 5, tier 6 at most, just as Wide Park is. So he's trying for some shots at the things on the hill, but honestly, I think these couple of shots, his shooting wasn't particularly great, but I think he was more concerned with keeping in cover, because there was possibly an artillery shell intended for him, or possibly it was intended for the T30 that's also kind of back here. That T30, by the way, has managed 5 kills already, but Manti, well, he's had at least I don't want to spoil it too much, but he's had at least one blind shot so far. One that you thought maybe didn't actually connect, but it will have connected. So his final tally on the damage counter won't actually be the final damage on the score screen. But at this point, I mean, we've managed to overcome the enemy. The E75 pulled all the way back to their base. The Waffle Panzer IV is kind of pinned down on this side. They still also have an artillery left, but they've basically... like, unless they really screw up at this point, they've basically won. So Manti gets into gear, and hopefully the T-34 will follow up, and between them, they can take out this Waffle. And you'll notice Manti's going for the high-risk shot here. He's loading up HE. Now, the Waffle Panzer IV, very thinly armoured. If he hits in the right place, this is going to do more damage than even an AP shell would. But just as equally, it might go in the tracks, or the gun. It's potentially possible to hit one of these waffles and do basically nothing. So there we go, 871. Possibly you could one-shot that with an AP shell, but there we go. That was a hell of a shot. I don't even know if that was an auto-aim there. I think that was just... like, for that kind of third-person shot, that was very, very well done. And it did go somewhere where it could pen, so he one-shotted the guy. And like I said, the AP possibly could have done it, but the HE penning was basically guaranteed. So, lo and behold, surprise, surprise, the artillery's over there. Interesting. Now, the French arty is pretty fast, and I'm thinking maybe he went over there just to try and secure a better angle for firing on Manty's team's cap circle. But it now means he's basically stuck here, so nom 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 nom. Nice kill for Manty. Bit more damage. He actually gets there just ahead of his own artillery trying to nail that guy. So it just remains to kill that E75 now, who, rather than cowering behind a rock, has decided to come out and fight like a man. Or, well, who knows what his motivation is. Maybe he just didn't want this to be a drawn out, you know, just acknowledging that he's lost. And there we go, another nice third-person shot there. And actually, considering that was a third-person shot, that was maybe a little bit lucky at pen. But that was the final kill, the final bit of damage, and that was an ace mastery as well as high caliber. So you'll get to see in just a second. I mean, there's the list of the tanks he's damaged and hurt. On that list is the T-54, so that's the one he hit blind, I think, and there might have been another one as well, but in the end, 8,000 damage done. Now, that might have just looked like Manty just, you know, sitting at the back and not doing a whole lot, but you look at the damage on the rest of the team, you know, the T-30 with 5 kills did less than 3,000 damage. That was, damage-wise, a carry by Manty, essentially, and you might decry the fact that, yeah, he was sitting at the back in a tank destroyer, but on mines, most of the tank destroyers kind of, like, what else are you going to do? There's very few tank destroyers in that kind of situation where you could afford to go forwards, where there's really any terrain that you could use, even something you want to go hull down in, like a Jagdtiger, for instance. Artillery, you know, just forget about it. Hull down's not even an option, so he was kind of forced to do that, I feel, and ended up basically, even though they'd lost the hill, securing that as a win, just by the sheer amount of damage done. But crucially, the rest of his team managed to do various things as well. They didn't all just die, as in the first replay. So there we go, that's been our trio of replays for today. I hope you've enjoyed them, and if you have, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can subscribe to my channel, and as always, stay tuned for more.